Good to talk to you, and boy, the pressure is mounting, isn't it?
Well, I hope so. It's been over a year, so nobody can accuse us of having a rush to judgment. The same questions I had this time last year, I still have, and they're legitimate, they're fair, and it's not going away.
And you passed an amendment making sure that no money is appropriated to DOJ if they continue to mislead, lie, and stonewall Congress they've been doing for months. It had strong support also from the Democrats.
Well, that was, Jason Chaffetz actually just left my office. Jason had an amendment and I had an amendment, both of which hit the Department of Justice on the appropriations. And you're right. On my amendment, the Democrats didn't even ask for a recorded vote. They didn't even ask for the yeas and nays. I don't think they asked for the yeas and nays on Jason's, but even though he won the voice vote, he asked for it.
And that was yours with the cut in salaries, right?
Mine was the cut to senior level DOJ officials under the theory that if I can't get you to do it with a subpoena, if I can't appeal to your sense of law and order and respect for the process, then I don't have any choice but to impact your appropriations.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think it's going to go now?
Well, we're going to have a pretty frank conversation within the family. If what I read this morning is correct and leadership is not prepared to move at a speed with which I think the issue warrants, then I'm just going to have to break from the pack. I am asked every time I go to South Carolina, I am asked during interviews on TV, radio, when are you going to do something about Eric Holder? And what I come back to is this, Jenny, if you get a jury summons, it's not optional for you whether or not to comply. Mm-hmm. When I get a subpoena requesting documents or a subpoena for a deposition for my old job, it's not optional. And if we do not make him comply with a lawfully executed subpoena, or at least force him to tell us the legal privilege he's relying on in his noncompliance, what it proves to me is that some viewed this as a political exercise all along, and it has never been a political exercise to me. So if you're right on policy, then you don't really need to worry about the politics. It'll take care of itself. Mm-hmm. And we're right on policy. So several of us, and I suspect it's more than leadership may imagine, and I also suspect it's bipartisan.
Yeah, because it sure's looking that way. I mean, you got the Democrats that are voting 142 on the amendment we were talking about. You've got Democrats like Representative Joe Donnelly coming right out this week saying he supports this move to enforce the subpoena, requiring Attorney General to turn over these documents.
Well, it ought to be bipartisan, or actually it should be nonpartisan. It should have nothing to do with politics. And, Representative Chaffetz and I were just talking, and we ask ourselves honestly, if it were the next administration, if it were a Republican Attorney General, we would be doing exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's not, I was on a show last night. The United States Attorney in South Carolina was obviously appointed by President Obama. And I helped do his background check. I think he's doing a great job in South Carolina. The one reason that we like the justice system is that it's not overtly political. So why would we allow Attorney General? I've heard every excuse that, people attack me because of race. They don't like me because I'm progressive. I could care less about your race, and while I'm not a progressive, this has nothing to do with that. Yeah. Now, I'll be happy to criticize some of your other decisions based on pursuing a political agenda. This is simple to me. If you're going to have a subpoena, are you going to make them comply with it, or is it just an empty piece of paper that you sent over there for fun, or to boost the Postal Service's revenues?
Right, because I was just talking to Congressman Gosar and Walsh this week, and they were saying the same thing. We got to move on with this. They were urging Congressman Issa to do it right now. And
Congressman Issa is not the issue. Congressman Issa is prepared to move forward, and Congressman Issa has been prepared to move forward. When I say leadership, I mean really leadership.
Yeah.
Chairman Issa is part of the solution and not part of the problem. And Joe and Paul have been fantastic on this issue. And obviously, Paul represents Arizona.
Yep. No, and I know, and I think the urgency is really, as you said, it's coming to a point, and I think it's what not only the American people expect, but we're talking about a dead Border Patrol agent, and Brian Terry's family saying, what about the truth?
Well, you're talking about a dead Border Patrol agent. You're talking about weapons that are still unaccounted for, and let's be frank, they'll be used in future crimes. And you're talking about dead, innocent Mexican citizens, and there have been no answers, no acceptance of responsibility, no accountability, no sanctions. Nobody's been demoted. Nobody's been fired. And my perspective is this: they're going to continue to thumb their nose at congressional oversight until you call their bluff. So what are you waiting on?
Yep. Yeah, because nothing's working, so you got to do what you got to do.
And at some point, you begin. What ultimately will destroy our justice system is if there is evidence to support the narrative that there are different rules for those who govern than those who are being governed.
Yep. And
if any of your listeners can honestly say that they would lawfully be able to ignore a subpoena and have no consequences, I'd be shocked. I've seen people get in trouble for being late for jury service.
Yeah. And I've got to ask, because you're a former prosecutor, how does this work? I mean, if you filed the contempt charges, does this have to go through the Attorney General's office?
I don't think so, because it would create the curious anomaly of him having to enforce it against himself. I frankly don't think it would get to that point. I think the president would step in while we're in the process of marking up a contempt resolution, and he would say, Attorney General Holder, if there's nothing in those documents that's bad, why hadn't you turned them over yet? And if there is something in those documents that's bad, you might want to go into the private practice of law, because this is turning into a political issue for me. But that will only happen if they believe that we are serious about moving forward.
Yeah, but at the same time, this is a president. I mean, he's been standing by his man. He's come out himself, said, I don't like the Constitution. It's keeping me from what I want to do. You really think he'd do that in the end?
Oh, I think the thing that drives 99.9% of all elected officials is very easy to put your finger on. It starts with and ends with election. So I think if he believes that the Attorney General has become something of an albatross and is impacting his ability to carry some swing states, air court will be in the private practice of law quicker than you can say Mark Rick.
Mm-hmm. That'd be very interesting. I got to ask you on another issue. What do you make of President Obama threatening to veto the appropriations bill for the DOJ that you and your colleagues passed? That includes a provision that blocks ATF's multiple gun reporting scheme.
I would love to think that anything we've been doing this week is ever going to become law, but the reality is the Senate's been in a 3-year-long nap, and they haven't passed a budget, certainly since I've been here. So the frustrating part for us is that, we can stay up till midnight voting on amendments and getting a CJS approach bill. Senate's not going to do anything with it, and we'll be right back to the point of having to vote on CRs until we can have an election in November. So we've been in full campaign mode for, almost 12 months now. Mm-hmm. So everything that comes out of his mouth, whether it's an epiphany on marriage, whether it's XL Keystone, everything is tailored towards being reelected. And as he told the Russian president, he hopes to have more flexibility in a second term, which ought to scare the ever-living daylights out of everyone.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And, you look at this administration, you got one scandal after another. And as you were talking about, it's about going around the law. I mean, it's like a standard procedure.
Well, and it's surprising for someone who claims to be a constitutional law scholar. We had Secretary Sebelius before a hearing a couple of weeks ago, and I was stunned at the fact that she didn't consult any Supreme Court cases and just showed a general annoyance with being asked about the constitutional underpinnings of her HHS mandate. It's just a different way of governing. To me, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It's where you start. To them, apparently, you just bring it out every now and again when you need a historical document to make reference to.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. I'll tell you what, I just was talking with some ranchers here in the studio from Arizona, and they just looked at me and said, they can say what they want about the border. They're concerned about what they see about it's not secure. They say they're concerned about what they see going on with Operation Fast and Furious. And, I think like so many people, they're saying, hey, you know what, November, most important election we've had in a lifetime.
It is, and that is why there is some merit to keeping some of your attention on November, and you certainly don't want to commit unforced errors. On the other hand, how are you going to persuade people to let you govern and have all the gears of governance if you're not going to do anything right or principled when you have the majority?
Mm-hmm.
And there is no argument on the other side of compliance with a subpoena. There is no argument. Anarchy is the only argument on the other side. So if we're not willing to press this issue, are your listeners really going to have any confidence that we'll be bold and courageous if they give us the White House and the Senate?
Yeah,
why would they?